What are XTB sentiments following the results for 2025? And will 2026 be a period of turbocharging for the company? This is what we're going to talk about in today's program, straight from the trading floor. My name is Przemysław Techmanowicz. I welcome you cordially to join us. We can say our tradition has been fulfilled because we have good results. When there are good results, then we're joined by the CEO of XTB, Omar Arnaout. Welcome, sir. Well, this is a bit of a tradition. When you have good results, then you join us. But when you have worse results, then Filip Kaczmarzyk is sent. Well, when I was on my way to visit you, Filip said he was saying that he should come in and represent us for a change. Well, sometimes analysts are asking who is actually going to be representing the company because this is a bit of an indicator. Let's go on to your results. Q4 was surprising to the market in a positive sense. We could see this on the stock exchange. After you published your results, was the market more conducive? Or is it the case that the mass that you've built is starting to convert into a statue? We can see that all of last year not entirely supported us. If we look just not at the fourth quarter, but if we look at events from April to August, all of the markets that are the most important for us in terms of generating our revenue were basically in a sideways trend. If we were to take a look at Q4, we can say that there was a lot of craziness on precious metals, but if we look at all of the other American indices, the DAX, German index, there was also a sideways trend. Generally speaking, last year, I don't remember, quite honestly, a year like last year when there would be so much sideways trends. This is clearly not a matter of a conducive market situation. This is clearly the base. And it seems to me that having in mind these sideways trends, our base, quite to the contrary to the appearances, hasn't really shown its potential. I'm actually more than convinced of that. That's in fact the case. Let's talk about the results for 2025. How would you sum up last year? Was this a difficult year, having in mind the market conditions, because you had far-reaching plans, crypto options, Brazil, so on and so forth. You also had some technical failures. There were a number of elements which were negative, had an adverse impact. We could say there were a few things. Let's go through these items one by one, because there's quite a few topics here. If we look at Q4 and all of last year, operationally, it was a very good year for us. Revenue grew by 15%. Unfortunately, our profit dropped by 25%. On the other hand, if we were to take a look at trading volume in lots for CFD, they were up by 40%. So the disproportion between the growth in revenue and the growth of trading volume on CFD instruments has shown once again what I mentioned at the very beginning, is this is a situation that was not entirely market-wise conducive to us. Had it been more conducive, we wouldn't see such a big divergence and the profit would have been clearly higher. Now, if we're looking at the positives and the negatives from last year, amongst the positive elements, it's the fact that we as a management team are focusing on technological development, product development. This is something you can see the fruits of that labor. We have a record-breaking number of new customers in Q4. It was more than 280,000 people in total. Last year, we had 860,000 new customers, so we're coming closer to that magical million. So we have an increase of some 75% compared to last year. The number of active customers was very high. It was up by some 70-odd%. So for the first time in history, we had a quarter in which we had more than 1 million active customers. These are the positive elements. Now, if we look at some of the other items you mentioned, this technical crash was a big surprise to us. It was a big surprise because we have never encountered a similar situation, and when it seemed to us that we had done a lot to make sure that we could maintain stability, then situations of this type could occur. We're doing everything we can to ensure that that doesn't happen, because it's wonderful we have new products, there's a lot of interest, but if somebody's going to invest long-term, stability is of paramount importance. I'm also an investor and also using the XTB application, and so for me stability is of paramount importance, and that's why we're working a lot on that. If we talk about Brazil, this is not entirely the case that this is an immense problem. Are you sad that you're not there? I'm not sure. It's a very difficult question. There are people who worked to get that license, and they might be upset with me, and if I say that I'm not entirely upset with the fact of not receiving that license, but the truth is that our primary objective is to be the app of first choice in Europe for everybody who wants to invest long-term and short-term. Of course, South America, Chile, and clients who are onboarding in Chile or in the United Arab Emirates, So they have earned the right to be in that base group, and I'm treating them as Europe in quotation markets. Would we achieve success in Brazil? This would be a nice plus, but it's not the essence of what we're doing. So we need to focus on other projects. So Indonesia is exactly the same thing. Basically, it's in a trial period. It started to work for us. Now it has 6-9 months in order to prove itself, to demonstrate that it deserves for us to place sufficient focus in terms of products and the commitment of our people for it to join the core group, Europe, and the United Arab Emirates. So I wouldn't treat this, well, the world is enormous. In some places, we're going to have positive surprises like in the United Arab Emirates, negative surprises like in Brazil. So I didn't lose any sleep over Brazil. What about products? Okay, products. And here there is a clear drawback. What pained me last year, this was the failure to adopt MiCA regulations in Poland. And I'm convinced that we would be in a totally different place had this regulation been adopted. And this is something that pains me quite strongly. Options to a lesser degree, because it's more a matter of embracing the model. We received the consent to offer options in Cyprus. Our customers in Cyprus, there aren't too many of them there, but they are already trading options. I've utilized options, so in terms of products, we can say that this does work. So in 1 or 2 branches, European branches, we're going to be able to offer options in Q1 of this year. So things are moving according to schedule. That's what I would say. Let's go back to 2025. We look at the decline in profitability on lots from 275 to 215. Is this a result of a long-term change in the mix of customers, or is this an offshoot of what happening on the market? It's clearly an offshoot of what happened on the market. So if we have in mind that the activity of our customers grew by 40%, this means that we're growing not only in terms of the number of customers who trade equities, and we're number 1 if we talk about access to the stock exchange, but we're also developing quite strongly in terms of CFD instruments. So it's not only a matter of a change in the nature of our customers, because we have many more customers. Let's fantasize a little bit. The market been conducive in 2025. You talked about not tapping into the potential. There's a lot of margin for improvement there. What sort of result would XTB have achieved? Well, I know that you're expecting me to talk about the magical billion. Of course, that's the case. Had the conditions been conducive, I think the 1 billion watermark would have been broken. Quite honestly, the number of customers, the amount of deposits, it's so high. Well, the base is very strong. The number of active customers grew by 70%. That's an enormous growth. So it took us 20 years to achieve the 1 millionth customer. Last year, we added 860,000. That means in 1 year, we did more or less as much as we did in the first 20 years. So I think our base would have clearly allowed us to generate that result. What about in January? Were the market conditions conducive to XTB? Are they bringing you closer to making that big step forward in the direction of 1 billion? Unfortunately, I can't give any comments on that. We are nevertheless a public company, so I can't give any commentary on that. So we never result forecast for a given year. Every year I have my own mental targets. And quite honestly, mentally, I would very much like to exceed that 1 billion, magic 1 billion water market. So we want to have more than 1 million customers. That's what we say officially, and that's the forecast of the company. It's not really a forecast, but it's an internal challenge cast by Omar. I would like to achieve the 1 billion in profit. So 1 billion profit, 1 million customers in 2026. The goal is to have adding 250,000 customers per quarter. I think that's more or less the minimum. Our aspirations are substantially higher. What's your idea to increase the activity of customers and monetize them? Well, we have that slide. It's not CFD is not the first choice, but equities, plans, and things like that. At present, the main source of revenue are CFD instruments. So we can say on one hand that if the base of customers will grow so dynamically and we have a certain level of interest maintained in CFD instruments, then we would be able to monetize this business from that perspective or vantage point. The second issue is It's not the case that equities and ETFs and interest on free funds aren't generating revenue. But having in mind a low base of active customers, this is not something in our business model that could generate a large amount of revenue. But if we have 5 times more customers, then I think the revenue generated by low income or low margin products would generate substantial revenue. Up until now, we had a split into CFD and low revenue products. So with respect to CFD instruments where we want to generate the revenue, we're adding options as well as cryptocurrencies. The idea is we're not planning to offer options and cryptocurrencies at such favorable pricing terms. It doesn't mean it's not going to be a competitive offer. It's going to be very competitive, but it will not be commission free. So we're very much counting on options and especially cryptocurrencies, helping us a lot to diversify our revenue. I think we would have a totally different market valuation if we had more diversified revenue. You talked about fees. I want to focus in on that because in the social media there was a discussion, I think during the weekend, that somebody tried to submit an order and there were some additional commissions. That I understand this was a bug in the system and not a major change or long-term change. I don't know that situation in particular, but if this happened, this was an error in the system and we don't have any plans whatsoever in terms of ETFs and equities to have a lack of commissions up to 100,000 euros. What's happening in terms of the dynamism related to acquiring customers? You're going to reach a certain point in time in which that pace of growth will slow down. No, quite honestly, no. Let me talk about Poland. There are a large number of topics we can discuss here. In terms of CFD instruments, we could say, at least in the past, at one point, this was a niche product. It's clear it's not a niche product, especially having in mind the craziness on precious metals. In 2020, we added equities and ETFs. We were the leader in CFD, and it took us 4 or 5 years to be the leader in terms of equities. We're vying in a totally different segment where we're adding cryptocurrencies. We're going to be there from the very beginning. It's not the case that we're going to be competing with Crypto.com and Binance, because those are apps that are much more multifaceted than ours, because we're going to be offering only cryptocurrencies. We want to compete for a totally different type of customer who wants to speculate on cryptocurrencies. So we're going to start a totally new battle. So if the estimates are true, so in Poland they say that roughly 2 million people are making investments and 3.5 to 4 million people are investing in cryptocurrencies. We're talking about a totally different base. I don't see that ceiling at all. So if we look at the Polish branch, it seems to us that we've reached another ceiling. It's not the case that we're breaking through a new ceiling. We don't see the previous ceiling anymore. We're talking about Poland. I think the situation is exactly the same, where we're in the leader, like in Poland, Portugal, and so on and so forth. So if there are no ceilings here, what about in those areas where it's not the case that we're not an insignificant player, but we're not in the top 3? So Germany, France, the UK. So the ceiling, I don't think we can even see the first ceiling. So to be honest, over the next few years, reaching the 2 million customers per annum, I think that's a very realistic target. Will there be a ceiling in the future? Perhaps, but then the business reality will be totally different, and then we can think about something else. So I don't really see a ceiling. You talk about Poland, will it still be at the forefront, or will the mix be different? So Poland won't be the biggest market in your mix, and other countries will move to the forefront. Well, that's a very difficult question. Well, we're growing very dynamically everywhere, but we're growing more dynamically in Poland. Well, it seems to us sometimes that Poland has enabled us to reach a large number of recipients or customers. It seems to us that 20 years we've been the leader in Poland in terms of investments, first in CFDs, now in equities. So the brand awareness, the awareness of our offering is so strong. We're usually the player of first choice. So I would like to say there's going to be a much more diversification in Poland. Won't be so important to us, but I think it's practically unrealistic. That doesn't mean mean that in other places we won't achieve our development at a pretty fast pace, but the base is going to be totally different. Will 2026 be a period in which you're going to invest in growth, even at the expense of short-term profitability? No, clearly not. Last year, let's say, was a temporary or transitional period. So as I said, there are no internal plans within the company, but my personal ambitions are that we need to produce results. So I'm also a shareholder. What's important to me is for me to prove to myself and to others that this business model is working correctly and we want to generate good results. Can the competition basically throw a wrench into the works because a few new companies showed up in Poland? You've entered Indonesia. Some of your 3 competitors entered that market as well. Well, let me begin with Europe. In Europe, and I don't want this to sound arrogant, but I'm profoundly convinced that XTB has the greatest opportunity in Europe to be the player of first choice for people who want to invest. In Europe, there is no company that you can think about if you want to invest because it's a matter of choosing from several companies in Europe. There is competition, and we treat the competition with a lot of respect. We know exactly what the competition is doing. We're monitoring their products, but quite honestly, having in mind the fact that we have very good products, not only global international products, but also products that are aligned to individual markets like IKZE in Poland or the retirement account in the UK. So we're going to be able to compete with the largest companies across Europe. So there is competition in Europe. This motivates us, irritates us, but honestly, I think we have the greatest opportunity to be the player, the company of first choice for investments. If we talk about other countries, in Indonesia, we're nobody in Indonesia, so let's not fool ourselves here. So we can look at a small competitor in Europe. Well, Indonesia is looking at us. Maybe they're thinking that we might be successful. Maybe we won't be successful. In Indonesia, we're opening a large number of accounts. No branch in the history of the company has opened 1,000 accounts as quickly as Indonesia. Right now, we have deposits which are low, but this is not surprising to us because who are we? The brand awareness is non-existent, and the trust in the company is also non-existent. It's a matter of time. But we do assume that there's going to be a transitional or trial period. So over the next 6 to 9 months, if we're not successful, then we will turn our attention to the essence of our business. We're not going to wait for a miracle to transpire. It's not the case that you're only talking about Indonesia. If it works out, that's great, but if it's not, then it's a total failure. No. If we're successful in Indonesia, this is going to be a super surprise. It's going to be very nice if that happens, but if it's not going to be the case, then I'll forget about that in the course of a single day. So you talked about your ambitions related to your results and that you're focused on performance. Does that mean that you're going to be spending at a slower pace? Well, clearly. Let me break this response down into 2 parts. If we talk about marketing spend, that's not at all the case. So this year and next year, if we want to be the largest European company in terms of a super investment app, then we have to spend money on that. The product is not the case. The product is not going to be able to defend itself alone. But if we talk about other costs, that's clearly the case that we're going to slow down expenditure. So if we look at the budget for last year, I think it was the first time in my life that we took a budget. We had a major amount of reticence and a lot of attention for that budget because we were growing in terms of the number of persons in XTB, because over the last 5-7 years, that's something that did happen. But this year, in terms of the number of persons who are budgeted for this year, we're only talking about an increase of 1%. I don't think I've seen something like that in the history of the company. If we talk about payroll expenses, the amounts, if I'm not in error, so the growth is roughly 16.5%. We're talking about some raises and other changes. So we can say this is a very small increase the number of people working in XTB today is clearly sufficient in order to achieve our success and achieve the targets that we have in mind. So having in mind all of the non-marketing related costs, we have a very restrictive approach. So I'm looking at with the eyes of my imagination. So it's not marketing. I'm thinking about, betting on those people to have as few failures as possible. In terms of that team, the technology team, I don't think any team outside of HR in the last 2 years was buttressed as strongly as the stability team. So in terms of hardware, but also software and people, staff, here I think we have a sufficient number of persons on board. So let's talk about marketing campaigns. Do you have the impression that this big campaign with Zlatan is something that's paid off? Clearly, yes, it has paid off. What's interesting, and this is something akin to what Zlatan is like, if we look at the viewership on YouTube, in terms of the ads with his participation, we have the best results. So we have the smallest number of people skipping over that advertisement. So if somebody sees Zlatan, they want to see the spot to the end. They want to hear what he has to say. So it's clearly something that's paid off. So why are we working with brand ambassadors? Generally speaking, the product is very good, that's clear. But if the advertisement pertains only to the product, somebody might not even wait to hear the essence of that product. So Zlatan is helping us to ensure that we have greater attention amongst the audience. So he's strengthening our message. Are you planning to do something more this year? That's a hard question because honestly, I don't know myself. We're going to work with Tyson Fury. That's not a surprise to anybody. In terms of Zlatan, we have a contract in place up until the end of the vacation period. I don't remember until which period this year. So we're continuing, we're considering the continuation of that contract. Zlatan is very well recognized. The results have shown it's worthwhile, so he's good to work with him. And so basically we can say that ads don't, get out of date in such a short period of time. I think that's something that's not realistic in such a short period of time. What about some ad hoc campaigns like gifting equities? There were some ideas of that ilk. Well, yes, clearly. I don't want to talk about a specific branch, but in the UK, if I'm not mistaken, I think last week we kicked off a campaign of that type in Chile. I think it was 2 weeks ago that we kicked off a campaign in Indonesia. We'll kick off a campaign in 2 weeks. So this is a process that's taking place regardless. So virality is something that's very important. If we think about 2026, we have an announcement of new products, crypto, spot, option, margin trading, investment plans 2.0. Which one of these products, in your opinion, offers the greatest potential? Potential in terms of monetization? Well, I believe that cryptocurrencies are clearly at the forefront. But we need all of those products from the point of view of soliciting or acquiring new customers and generating interest. So I think products linked to tax preferences or pension products are very important. And I'm not talking about Poland specifically. It was a great idea to have PIA introduced in France and ISA in the UK. And we have the technology department working on cash ISA to introduce by March. So we can do that on a timely basis for this season. In the UK, we're thinking about the Hungarian market, the Czech market, and so the German market, in Poland. So I think these products are very, very important to us because they're very important to customers. But in terms of monetization, I would say cryptocurrencies are the most important. So now we have to talk about the topic of cryptocurrencies in the Polish market. We seem to be stuck in a legislative slump or a suspension. If this is something that will persist over time, what is XTB's idea in terms of taking a bite out of crypto in Poland? Well, I would say I won't give a commentary about Poland. I would talk about the Polish branch itself. I'm talking about how we can take a bite out of crypto in XTB. So I'm not sure if this would pertain to Poland or not. Last year in December, we secured a license in Cyprus. So ultimately, I'm not sure ultimately, but there is an idea to offer this to customers from Cyprus, to offer it to customers. We wouldn't advertise that. We could only offer that to our current customers. But if we're going to be compelled to do this, that's the ultimate solution. Of course, we're keeping our fingers crossed for Poland. We're a Polish business with an office in Poland, so we're counting on being able to offer this from Poland. But it's also the case that there is a time limitation because the competition is continuing to develop. How much time are you giving yourselves? I would say Q2, Q3 at the latest. In any case, in Q1, we're going to have a version for friends and family where we'll be able to test that version. And in Q2, we have to make a decision. We'll begin with countries that are not EU member states because this is not linked to a Polish license or the implementation of the MiCA regulation. But later, in Q2, if crypto is introduced to non-European branches, then in Q3 is more or less our stop loss in quotation markets, where we're thinking about offering this to European customers on the basis of the Cypriot regulation. What about options in the Polish case? You're working on an ongoing basis with Polish FSA. Do you see some light in the tunnel? This is something that can happen in the near future? From the point of view of probability, I think this is Q2. But here, as I mentioned, we have the Cypriot regulation. And if we think about the Spanish branch where we don't have CFD instruments, I would like for customers being able to trade options in Q1 in Spain. So there's not a major blockage here. I think we will gradually roll out options. We would prefer, of course, to do that from Poland, but we will clearly not wait until Q3, as is the case for cryptocurrencies. International expansion. We've talked about Indonesia. In the final months of 2025, you had mentioned that Western Europe is a topic that you want to pay attention to. It's clear that you're still a small, minor player. It's easy to generate that fast growth. You need to grow. So if you talk about that trend to grow in Western Europe, is that something you want to continue in 2026? Or have you arrived at the conclusion it's not sensible to do that and you shouldn't spend more money there? I think the biggest challenge will be the UK, because that's a highly competitive market and the competition has had huge marketing budgets for 10, 15 years. So penetrating that market, even with a larger budget, even with a good product, that's a major challenge. So if marketing was a matter of spending a lot of money and things have to be successful, then everybody would spend that money. That's not how things work. The UK is kind of a question mark whether or not it's going to be a successful undertaking. If we talk about France or Germany, we received the response that it's already a success, and now it's a matter of having that base in place. So if we were to divide last year into two parts, in the first half of the year, we had a large incremental increase in terms of the size of the business and trading volume. I felt some lack of satisfaction. Maybe it's a matter of impatience, but in the latter half of the year, we can say that the incremental growth was huge. It's a matter of that snowball effect. Had we never had large marketing budgets there and our products were not sufficiently good, and last year our products became very good and we started to spend more in marketing, then we saw the impact in the latter half of the year and things were looking very nice. So if we look at the results in the second half of the year in terms of the number of new customers, the deposits and trading volume, and we were to add 30 to 40% this year, so this is something that would satisfy me. So we can say that that satisfaction has been achieved in the latter half of the year. So I'm convinced there that it's only a matter of time for us to be one of the leaders. So that's more or less it in terms of the formal portion. So at the end, I want to propose an informal portion, of course, if you concur, of course. Well, let's move on. I'm more stressed by the results of Manchester United than the results of XTB. No, that's not possible. Somebody's watching this. I will respond, but I'll also say why. Yes, I'm more stressed by the results of Manchester United. It's because I don't have any control but in XTB. This is in my hands, and if it's not successful, it's my fault. It's not my fault there, and I'm only irritated. So Polish brokerage houses, I don't see as competitors for XTB. I won't respond to that question. I will not respond to that question. That's actually a nasty question. I didn't say things were going to be easy. Potentially the biggest competitor for XTB is the following company. In Europe, across the globe, generally speaking, across the globe. Well, I would say Revolut, boldly. It's a financial app, not an investment app, but I have a huge amount of respect for their development over the last few years. Well, we're in totally different branches, maybe not entirely different branches, because they also have investment products. So I'm looking at Revolut with a lot of respect. If I could transpose one solution from abroad to XTB, what would it be? From a foreign company? Well, that's easy. I would say cryptocurrencies. That's very easy. It's clearly the case that I would transpose cryptocurrencies. The biggest thing that bugs us is regulations or the lack of regulations in our business. Well, this is a not very nice question. Well, can't wait. The best is coming at the end. Let me respond. Yeah, I would say quite honestly, yes, that's the case. I won't change my opinion. This year, XTB will be in the VIG20 index. I don't know. This is something I don't know. I have a mixed opinion. We have mixed opinions. Some people believe that's going to happen. Some people don't believe that will happen. I'm not even looking at that. We were talking about this at the management board meeting yesterday, in fact. This is more a matter of the hard work we're going to do. So if it doesn't happen this year, I know this is going to transpire at some point. We have a lot of aspirations. We know what our hunger for success is like. I won't accept that this will not happen at some point in the future. So a topic that we began the meeting with in 2026, I believe that XTB will achieve the 1 billion profit watermark. I've already responded to that question. This is not an official forecast, but I'm going to do everything that I can in order to achieve that. I'll come back to that question about Polish brokerages. I'm going to come back to that with, perhaps I shouldn't, and perhaps the head of PR will have some less than kind words for me, but when I get back to the office. But I will say this. I believe that Polish brokerage houses frequently are missing that hunger for success, which we see in Revolut or Robinhood in the US or even eToro or Trading 212. The idea is these are companies that know exactly what's happening across the world. They're in a rush. Market development is key. Technological development is key. It's crucial. Basically, I find it missing that desire for change in the environment. Remote Trading Public in Germany started its business, and then suddenly the whole industry got upset because you shouldn't run business that way. The entire industry started to think about what should we do in order to alter our business model and adapt to the new realities. So quite honestly, in my opinion, this is something that's missing in the Polish industry at present. Are you going to go to Bukowina? I'm going to go to Bukowina. Of course, I'm already rubbing my hands. I have one more question at the end about the 1 billion profit. If XTB doesn't achieve the 1 billion, I will publicly announce that I will shave my mustache. No, this is the only thing that's it's my trademark. I thought you would allow yourself to be caught by that. In any case, thank you very much for today's discussion. This was Omar Arnaout with us today. Thank you very much for the conversation. Thank you very much.